CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I'm Greg. I'm with CMMS Radio. And CMMS Radio is a podcast about computerized maintenance management software. We tend to focus in on maintenance management, the people and the process that feed into these systems. And today we're going to really focus in on maintenance as almost like a mechanism towards driving sustainability in manufacturing, because maintenance is at the heart of that. And we're joined here on stage, I guess we'll call it, by Jim Mayer. He's with the Manufacturing Connector. He's been in the industry for some time at different levels. He focuses in quite a bit on the culture necessary to adopt these technologies and institute these changes within an organization to, again, drive that sustainable manufacturing. We also have Cory Dickens. He's a CMRP, that's a Certified Maintenance and Reliability Professional. So top to bottom, left to right, he's getting exposed to and constantly working with all the concepts in the professional body of work that enable proper maintenance. Phenomenal reliability is what you're shooting for, which creates availability. And there's a lot of sustainability within that. So we're going to get into that. He's with Brightly Siemens. They happen to be a CMMS solution. But really, what we want to start off with is kind of simply stated, when we're looking for sustainability within a manufacturing type environment, we're going to focus on finding, identifying waste and eliminating it. That's going to move us closer to a more sustainable operation, but it can go in many different directions from there. So, first thing I want to do is kick it over to Jim and have you talk a little bit about what you've seen in the last year as it relates to sustainability. It's a very big concept now. It's on the forefront of all these organizational minds when it comes to how can we be better, how can we be more sustainable, less waste. What have you been seeing and hearing out there, man?
A lot. But I want to say first, thanks for having me. And you have this buttery voice, man, that is absolutely magical. For all of you out in the audience and watching on the video, we're all friends too, right? And so it's not often I get to be on a panel with people I enjoy as much as I enjoy you too. So thanks for being here. Over the last year, seen a lot of different things. Sustainability is a really polarizing conversation to have. And I think from my experience, the conversations I have, sustainability is polarizing because it's typically phrased around environmentalism and climate change. And when you put those things in a room full of people who may not understand or believe in climate change, sustainability gets dismissed as a topic that isn't valid. Is that a fair statement? I mean, that's what I am in reading into this.
I think we tend to see that what's current and pressing takes a little while to become important to people. And right. They listen, they agree, they see it. But what this is really about is how do we convert that into some form of action? Because, once we get into the definition of maintenance, which I'm going to have Cory talk a little bit about that, we all do a lot of talking and listening about these topics. We hear the buzzwords, and I think you're essentially spot on. Now, caveat emptor.
Sure.
When it comes to these initiatives that we're talking about, they're a big undertaking. They're not easy. They take a lot of resources. So yeah. I think there's a little extra bit of resistance from people to say, yeah, not only do we like that, we want to do that, we're going to do that, because that puts a lot at stake.
Well, and I think that when we talk about change management as a topic, when it is related to sustainability, a lot of the employees, as we see average age drop in manufacturing facilities, we see social justice topics rise in importance with the employees themselves, okay? So change only truly happens when people feel like they have a say in it. I think we talked about this last year,
We
right?
did. Yeah.
And so when your people are passionate about sustainability and sustainability for environmentalism, that takes a different frame than sustainability from an elimination of waste standpoint, right? And so I think that there's terminology that's being mixed and paths that are crossing because sustainability hasn't been defined on both sides of the conversation of importance within a facility.
You bring up a really good point, so I want to ask Cory, when it comes to, first of all, the concept of maintenance is an act. It's an activity of preserving and keeping a machine functioning within its designed intention of use. And when Jim brings up this idea that we bring that into sustainability, whether it's ESG, which I'm going to have you define for us, or something else, we do see there's both overlap and there is a lack of clarity on what it really is, because nowadays, and hopefully I'm not wrong about this, but what I see is a lot of these things get talked about and then multiple people and organizations come in and define them, as you're referencing, and it actually causes more confusion than it does clarity. So what do you think of all that when it comes to how we define what maintenance is, how that leads us into the idea of sustainability, and what is ESG?
That's a multi-part question, man.
I don't know why you have me defining things. You started this with I'm a maintenance guy, right? So ESG, environmental, social, governance, 3 parts, right? We talked about this. Everyone assimilates and fixates on the environmental aspect, and then it's, all right, what are we doing from energy waste and sustainability, right? You're spot on with the definition of maintenance. How it ties into this is if you're doing the due diligence and doing these actions and doing them well, they're kind of in parallel. When we talk about change management, it's a threefold or 3-tier, right? You have strategic, operational, and tactical. In the boardroom, it's a competitive advantage. They're tackling it because it can drive investor relations. It's a hot topic to talk about, and it gives them a competitive advantage, right? Cost savings, eliminating waste. That gets trickled down to the game of telephone, right? To the leaders, the functional leads of the business who say, all right, these are eliminated waste areas. We need a map to waste, and we need to eliminate waste. When a shop floor person hears either a social justice issue or the company's trying to cut corners. They're trying to save money, right? And they're going to be greedy, and they're going to keep it from themselves because we're talking about for-profit businesses. This is not an employee-owned, it's not a very popular business model, right? Employee ownership. I wish it was more. To come back to your point, though, we don't define things, and that's kind of the problem, right? We don't define things. We ask a question, and someone says something, and they say it, and we don't challenge them on it, and then we run with it. So we play this game of telephone, and if we all played it, which we all did, right? The message at the end that gets communicated on the shop floor, that gets reinforced through daily activities, is not what the boardroom really said, why we're doing it. So to your point, what's in it for me? Why should I care, and how is this going to help me? So backing up a little bit, thinking a little more abstract, maintenance is not the sole responsibility of the maintenance group. I said this last year, there's a difference between quality assurance and quality control. Quality assurance are the coordinated activities and the culture of the organization to think quality first. We say this with safety as well, right? Quality control is the actual measurement mechanism. That is the maintenance group, right? The organization should be bought into maintenance as a collective habit, collective behaviors. Sustainability is the same way. The issue is it's in isolated pockets based on regulation.
So what you may notice, or may not, is when we take change management, maintenance, the levels of the organization, what it really means out in the world and within our organization, all those gaps present the challenges and hurdles that we can't necessarily get beyond. And this is always, my opinion, not so sure if it's the right one, a people thing. Cory already mentioned behaviors, And how do we get an organization and everyone within an organization to behave in the same or similar ways as it relates to their objectives and how they achieve those objectives? That's very hard to do. We're all different, we're all individuals, but when we are bought in and we understand the what's in it for me, why are we doing this, how does this make an impact in my daily life, how does it make an impact in the community, and so forth, that all can speak to sustainability. But I want to switch gears just a little bit. When we talk about maintenance management specifically, maintenance itself as a function of the organization to drive sustainable manufacturing, I first want to know, do any of you have a CMMS at your organization? Show of hands. All right. Now,
30%.
Exactly. 30% if we're doing a proper count.
33.
Okay, we'll go with 33%. But just having that solution is a good thing. But the question comes down to, how is it set up? What is it tracking? What are you seeing? But then, what are you doing with those data points? So we need standardization of language. We need to have enough contextual data to make these decisions, to find our sustainability gaps, which would actually be maintenance gaps. So I'm going to bring this back over to Jim. What do you think of this idea that leadership brought in a system, has deployed a system, you're just now hearing about it for the first time, and they say, here's our system, go ahead and use it. What kind of resistance do you think happens?
It's going to fail. So I'll tell you a story, and then I'll tell you why. Okay? So at one point in my life, I worked for an organization that said, we need to do a better job of capturing customer data. So they invested in a CRM system from a small company called Salesforce. And we deployed that and said, everybody's going to use it. And it fell flat on its face because none of the salespeople who were the ones being asked to use this knew why. It appeared to the sales force that this was a way for Big Brother to keep tabs, right? We hear this all the time with new software deployments. It was a way for Big Brother to keep tabs on the activities of the salespeople. That organization scrapped the entire effort and paused for 6 months, said, okay, how do we get buy-in from the floor? It has to be part of their wants. We have to draw on the needs that they have. So we started asking our sales teams, what is the most important thing to you in achieving your sales targets? And we took that data and we went back to Salesforce and said, these are our obstacles. And so we created customized training for the sales force to solve the problems that they have that exist on their floor, right? On the sales floor. The science behind all this is, and we've talked about this before at length, but you audience members haven't heard this. People love change. The idea that people hate change is just categorically false. People love change, though, when they have a say in change. If we truly didn't love change, we wouldn't have the travel industry that we have. We wouldn't have the restaurant industry that we have. We wouldn't have the fashion industry that we have. These are all things that initiate change in people. But the common thread behind this is that people are able to dictate what changes, right?
They have a say.
They have a say. So if we go to teams and say, hey, what is your biggest problem? And they say, our biggest problem is knowing when preventive maintenance is due. Great, there's a solution for that, right? But when we have owners that go to trade shows and buy the bright, shiny shit that's sorry guys, all right. The bright, shiny things that are on the floor of the trade show, and they take them back to their shop and they're like, implement this. Never works. One of my jobs at one point in my career, I sold tool presetters. One of my customers bought a $150,000 tool presetter, specially made in Italy, shipped it over, all in landed cost close to $200K. I went and visited that customer. 3 years after I sold it, it was under a dust tarp and had never been used. It was a $200,000 paperweight on this guy's shop floor because his employees didn't know why it was there. Right? So, going back to your question, you buy something, you implement it, you deploy it, and you don't give them that why, the with them, the what's in it for me, it's a paperweight. I don't care if it's software or if it's hardware. It's just going to sit there.
I agree, and we see it all the time, right, Corey, in the world of CMMS or otherwise, where initiatives at their heart are well-intended, and it all makes sense. And then we bring something in, whether it's, leadership says, there it is, make it work, or we've actually done all the steps and the work, and we've got the right culture, and everybody's like, yep, we're ready for that right there. And then all of a sudden, nothing happens. They get back to business.
Your question to Jim was specifically on the CMMS. You can replace that acronym with any other acronym you could think of. It's same thing happens with sustainability initiatives, right? Like, I'm a maintenance guy who's talked to many manufacturers who then pull in their chief sustainability officer, and they're like, hey, we can put these IoT sensors on our motors, and we can measure the energy draw, so we're sub-metering. And again, it becomes like, cool, if we're tackling the same problem using one solution, and that both teams are bought into this, and we're moving towards 100%. Why? Because 30% of a industrial client's utility bill goes right out the door, right? We know this through Department of Energy statistics. I pay $1 million a month in energy, $333,000 are going right out of an open bay door, right? Never being used to drive our processes. That's a lot of money you can use on other initiatives or pay raises. But, again, it's the what's in it for me. It's a systemic problem of how we communicate. I don't think it's the people, it's the communication piece. But we're humans, so we're never going to fix that.
Right. So now let's go back more on point with the topic. And I'd like to have you talk about some of the low-hanging fruit when it comes to maintenance as a driver of sustainability. Where can we look within our organization's maintenance department or process to find some quick wins that add value from a sustainability perspective, and then switch it up to a little bit more advanced?
Can I spend money or no?
Yes.
Oh, so if I'm going to spend money, the least disruptive thing to a current team's process may be looking at better electrical or electricity system utility power distribution, right? So thermography inspection, getting some handguns, doing IR inspections of different panels, right? Understanding, are those loose connections or unlike materials that have been configured by 4th and 5th generation handymen down the road that we just call in, giving us the issue with our equipment and our processes that we're facing, right? All this is a system and it's connected. Sub-metering assets with amperage meters or hot drops, right? Those are great ways that augment the current process without disrupting anything the maintenance team is doing, and gives them the kind of insights that will be like, oh, that's interesting, right? Or Jim Bob's going to be like, see, I told you.
Why'd you have to use Jim Bob?
Yeah, why not? But if I can't spend money, I'm going to say they need to look at, you need a value stream the maintenance process, right? Hey, where do you heat map it of your facility, if you will, mentally? Where do they go to do the work? Where do they go to get the parts? Where do they go to document the work? Like, what are all the stops in the process, right? The waste of the human motion, right? If you keep them focused at the task on hand, get a lot further. But then to the waste. So the waste of when we let equipment fail, not because we've actually decided we're going to run a fail, that's just we don't communicate well as an organization. And we have a production quota to hit, so we're going to keep running it into the ground, and then we're going to be like, whoops! So now a $200 repair becomes a $10,000 repair, and it's down another week, which only hurts the business even further, right? So if you can't spend money, implement or evaluate implementing 5S, especially how you do inventory management. Inventory is a lot of money. And again, that has upstream and downstream effect on recycling or landfill and also your suppliers, like who you're getting it from, right? So if you think of sustainability holistically, it's resource conservation, right? How do I maximize the potential of this resource without wasting it and having to replenish it with another rare resource?
Yes, and just to clarify, that was 5S. So if you're not
Don't
familiar,
ask. I can define a lot of things. Do not ask me to name all 5 in order.
I'm not going to have you do that, but I want to encourage everyone to look up 5S as part of your strategy, just so you can learn what it is and why it can help you identify some of these things. And what's really interesting about what you had mentioned there, and I think I'm going to have you talk about this, Jim, is you mentioned the heat mapping and the movement of our human bodies when we're doing the work. The technicians, the cowgirls and cowboys that are out there getting this stuff done, they are responding to, maybe it's a break-fix scenario. Maybe there was an operator error, operator doesn't know what that really is, calls maintenance over. Maybe there are workloads that are unscheduled, so there was some planned maintenance and then it was scheduled for this day, but it wasn't kitted. What I mean by kitted is a full kit where the things you need to complete that job, start to finish, are right there ready to go. These different types of movements represent a major area of inefficiency within all organizations. If we're in this facility, it's a gigantic convention center, and we have to move through it and check, verify, fix, or notate things that need more attention. That takes time. So efficiency of movement is a way to put some of that back in the bank, so to speak, within your organization and your team so that they can move better, they're not as fatigued. You're just eliminating waste with something like that. But I think, Corey, you had something you wanted to add?
I just want to back it up with a statistic.
Fire away.
So there's an industry statistic. I know you said you've been in maintenance a long time, so you'll support this. 20 to 30% of a technician's day is spent just looking for the right part to get the equipment back into service.
Wow.
Every day compounding across teams, right? How much time and monetary resources is spent, right? They're not sitting on the toilet on a break. They're looking for the part to get equipment back and running. But because we don't have the discipline to set, sort, sign, standardize, sustain, right? I don't know where the part is. I don't know how to find it. I have to find 5 different people who may or may not be here today to find it, then to get the equipment back up and running. Oh, I couldn't find it, so we went on and ordered another one of those $13,000 parts just to find it sitting in a box on the mezzanine.
And I will add to that, you could have this essentially mapped out, standardized, and set up in your system or systems, whether it's a CMMS or otherwise, doesn't even matter. And through that process, there's still going to be people that are on the plant floor, the shop floor, throughout the facility that don't even know that exists. That's how common it is for one side of the house not to talk to the other side of the house. But I wanted to talk to you, Jim, about this idea of the efficiency of movement, and because you've seen some of it, and you've talked about it at a lot of the different things you've done over the last few years. When you go on site, you have people in a room and they're telling you these stories, and it's all almost elementary stuff. Like, yeah, we have that. Of course, we know you do. Talk to me.
Man, it's like we forget what we were taught when we were in kindergarten. The older we get, we forget how to act like actual human beings. Right? I can't tell you how many times I've gone into an organization and done a culture audit or led a leadership development training. And people, the light bulb goes on and people, oh, I knew that at one point in my life. I don't know why I stopped doing it, right? We are conditioned as human beings to take the least impactful path.
The path of least resistance.
Correct. It's the same thing that water does, right? Water takes
electricity.
And electricity.
And then especially if you mix the two.
Don't mix water and electricity unless, well, you can use water to make electricity, but don't mix it.
Yeah. But as human nature, we choose that path of least resistance, the less impactful on what we do. So when it comes to things like Cory's talking about, looking for that part, looking for that tool, whatever it is, if we don't find it where it's supposed to be, we order the next $13,000 part.
Or the tool setter.
Or the tool setter, or whatever that looks like, right? So it's human condition. If we start treating employees like humans, they start acting like it again.
This is important because, we started off talking a lot about change management because it's one of the central points of resistance within organizations to adopt and really thrive with technology or with changing a process they already have in place. And that those also represent areas of potential increased sustainability in what we're doing as a manufacturer. Do you agree, Cory?
Yes.
Okay, that was a simple one. Well, no, you're not off the hook yet. So now what I want to talk about is when it comes to maintenance, and I don't know if you're going to have one for this or not. I'm just going to take a shot here. Maintenance done right that has realized improved sustainability. Can you give an example of that from your world, whether it was your time in the military, your time on the shop floor being head of maintenance, or your time in your role now where you get to work with so many people that are trying to achieve these things and maybe even chase down that, what do we call it, net zero?
I think the best example I have would actually be textiles. You think of the oldest, most mechanical and archaic industry that we probably still have in the States, dying but still alive, just not well. That was kind of my last actual industry gig, was in textiles. And so I had these 1960s Austrian-made narrow fabric needle looms, right? Very mechanical. So I had 5 horsepower drive to a variator, to a V-belt, to a flywheel, which would drive the heddle and it moves the needles up and down, right? It's really easy to maintain. But if you do it well, right? Again, this is where I didn't know about the amp clamps at the time. So again, we also had a dye range in the building, so it would heat the building. And guess what? People were like, it's too hot. So we open a big bay door and we just let it open, right? And then they say, well, it's too cold. So instead of closing the bay door, we crank up the heat on the HVAC unit, right? So again, these actions compound. I wish I would have known about those sensors. And again, my uncle has spent his whole working career as a lineman, so he knows electricity really well. And that's one of the things he talked to me about. He was like, if I were you, I wouldn't do all that fancy, this, that, the other. Just monitor the energy draw. Those things are like sucking through a straw. If they start struggling trying to compensate for something else in the system, they will draw more electricity. You set a threshold, it gives you an alarm, you go and react, a stitch in time saves 9. So now we're saving the electricity usage, I'm potentially saving the catastrophic failure of multiple components, which are costly, on a 1960s Austrian-made system that in 2020 was really hard to get. You had to go through Chinese sources, or you had to get someone to custom machine it for you, right? And then same thing, that compounds into a human, because the operator is frustrated. They have a production number they need to hit. So now they're going to start cranking up the speed on other pieces of equipment to compensate to get that same outcome so they don't get in trouble, which now puts other equipment, again, it's just compounding. Everything else is now under further strain, further backlog, waste of materials, right? These yarns that literally get cultivated in a field, and then whatever process they do to put it onto a spindle, and then we get it, right? And then all that material movement, it's all compounding. Probably the best example of this, though, is those same amp clamps. Actually, an organization in Ohio. They came into us thinking it was maintenance and sustainability, and really they just started with low-hanging fruit, which was sustainability. Because again, they have a culture that they wanted to present on a dashboard to the operators to interact with. Every employee of that organization to interact and understand where the waste in their utility spend was going. They wanted full awareness in the organization that, hey, your habits map Your decisions matter at the lowest level. May not be fun for middle-level management because they feel like they're not in control, that operators are making decisions, but that's how you get kind of that autonomous state, right? So again, we started with these ant clamps, and I think the savings they found on that, they just had some bad operating habits. They weren't aware they were lighting off multiple major consumers at the same time every single day. Something so simple, just a schedule tweak of what equipment gets lit off at what time draws down their peak demand, which again, instead of being locked into a tax bracket or a utility charge, peak charge bracket for 30 days, they get to stay at a certain level. I think it equated out to like $600 saved per day in utility expenditure, which again, compounds. How many years were they doing that? That's a lot of days.
Absolutely, and if you have those kind of data sets available, you can look at that retrospective, look into the past, maybe even look at what's happening now. But when we look at improvements like this and opportunities to create that sustainability through maintenance or even otherwise, you also don't want to overcomplicate it, because if you're trying to find a needle in a haystack and you're not having any clues as to which part of the haystack the needle might be in, you're spinning your wheels, you're wasting time, and you're getting in your own way. So the low-hanging fruit is most typically the place to start. You want to keep it really simple and focus on your basics. Once that foundation is set, however, is when we can get to a more advanced stage of evaluating our various maintenance processes, evaluating and understanding why a machine is really failing. Maybe we find out it's an operator that's putting the wrong material through or doesn't understand a particular setting, and we can get even better at keeping that line in the facilities and the people moving. Is that kind of a fair thing?
Yeah, maintenance and repair is a necessary evil, and it's always going to be seen as such, right? It can be kind of one of those strategic enablers, though. You can't manage what you can't measure, right? It doesn't mean all data needs to be consumed and contextualized and stored somewhere. Be very pointed on like what you are capturing, right? Again, 98% of sustainability initiatives fail. One of the 4 major reasons is they don't live up to the potential. Well, how did we get to that number to begin with? Who chose how we're going to measure this? Same thing with 80% of the maintenance initiatives fail, right? A little bit of the whiffle, a little bit of, well, how are we measuring it? Where did you come up with this number? So it's a necessary evil, but again, nobody wants to do maintenance. Not even the maintenance technicians want to do maintenance. Sorry to tell you, they want to sit in the shop with their feet up and watching YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So the only way to do that is to have the information. I think I presented this last year here. There's a gentleman that owned a machine shop up in Canada, and they were going through some sustainability initiatives. They were implementing it into their facility, right? One of the first things they did was lighting. And then they went into heating and cooling. And then he was like, wait, this can relate to the like the plant services too. So look at compressors, right? They did an energy audit, and they realized that compressor was twice the capacity they actually needed at peak draw. So they bought a smaller unit, right-sized to them, that actually had a variable drive to it, so it only ran half the time. So now, and because of those savings, they could just pay the vendor to come do the maintenance, and their team didn't have to worry about it. So you saved money, you right-sized the equipment for the application, and you outsourced the liability of it. I think that's a triple win for everybody.
I agree, and that's the importance of looking, and you're not running around just looking everywhere for anything you find. You don't know until you see it. You use these clues and these things to help you understand where those inefficiencies are, and that's how you get a hold of those things and make those changes. And I'm just really curious as you think about it, and this is Sustainable Manufacturing Conference. It's not manufacturing centric, but when you decommission a piece of equipment like that, where does it go? Did they resell it? Does it go out in the world and do some better work at a bigger facility? That just popped into my head. So it's very random, not necessarily related to our topic here, but I just wonder where those things go when they get decommissioned.
I mean, let's talk about that for a little bit, right? Because we have moved into an era of planned obsolescence, right? We drive cars that you can't wrench on your own. We have appliances in our houses that you discard as a one-use item, right? If we really want to talk about sustainability, I think we need to talk about sustainability of what we're making and what we're putting out there into consumers' hands. Not necessarily, I mean, I don't go into a whole lot of facilities that are like, I'm just going to scrap this Haas VF 400, right? And it's going to go sit in a landfill somewhere. But I think probably all of us at one point have scrapped a refrigerator or a washing machine or something of that nature. When we talk about sustainability in manufacturing, to me, that needs to be part of the conversation. And I know this is a CMMS, right? So maybe not the right forum for this conversation, but
I think it's fine. I think it's a good point.
I think we need to go back to making things that are easy to fix and that consumers can have maintenance people come in and fix toasters and washing machines and that kind of stuff. How do we get that to the point where our manufacturers, or as we reshore some of this consumer goods to the US, how do we get them to say, let's make it so it's easier to work on, that it's not planned to be obsolete in 5 to 10 years?
Well, and one thing to finish that off, that I'm thinking from a maintenance perspective within our facilities, whether it's inside or out in the world, if you're working on transformers or anything like that, when there is planned obsolescence, there should then be a plan for that piece of equipment potentially from a maintenance perspective or otherwise being deconstructed and goes out to live in different ways throughout the world. That's another way to incorporate sustainability, because if you're making something and something you use to make the thing is no longer working, some of it's still good. Somebody can repurpose that. They can strip out different parts of it, maybe computer chips or anything like that. But you had something to add, Corey, and then we're gonna get a couple questions.
I don't know if it's the right word, but last year, especially with the reusable packaging, they were kind of talking about the circular economy and the circular manufacturing of it. I think we got to do the same thing. So to your point, like, how do we get to that? Well, one, there has to be a consumer demand.
Sure.
The pushback to that will be, well, you don't have the right skill sets to work on this, right? So you think of like Tesla. So nothing against Tesla here. The whole right to work thing is because it's high voltage.
Right.
Yeah, there's kind of a liability aspect to me working on my own battery bank, right? Sorry, Tesla doesn't want, dum-dum here, Sparky, to get melted. But I mean, John Deere's been at the center of it for a long time, that you have to buy their diagnostic tool, have their dealers diagnose your tractor. It's a difference if you're leasing something or if it's a subsidized payment that's compensated at the purchasing amount. But when I'm buying a hundreds of thousands of dollars, 7, 8 series tractor, I kind of want the right to work on it myself. And farmers are, by and large, and I think brewers, craft brewers are the best at this, right? So I think we got to get back to craftsmanship as a culture, right? We do things the right way first time, which also means how we maintain things, which means how we build things, how we service them. And I think you're on to the point, but I think we're just waiting for that side of the economy to be built up. So in an environmentalist aspect, they call this scope 3. It's your upstream and downstream effects, right? It's not just your immediate, well, who do I get it from and who do I pass it on to and what do they do with it? It's full life cycle of the material, right? They call that scope 3. It's the hardest to track. But again, like when I dispose of a capital asset, what happens to it? Yeah, there's a salvage or reclamation cost to it, but where does that material go? Talk about Haas, CNCs. I know exactly the company it used to go to, because it was like we were adopting all the used ones and we had to figure out how to fix them. And I was like, how about we just buy a new one? I think we built a business case for this.
Well, that's another point when it comes to the things we need to improve in our plants and the different environments out on the oil rigs, whatever it might be, when it comes to the things we produce, the maintenance itself. Sometimes it just seems to make more sense to just roll out what's failing and roll in what's going to work, and
it's convenience.
It's convenience, and it's speed to solution, speed to realized outcomes. And sometimes I think I'll just say it, I think it's a bad habit. I think we don't slow down enough to do things right, because slow and steady can get you into a position where you can really start moving. And it's very painful to take that disruptive step of studying, understanding your environment, and then making the changes. It seems to be backwards. And now, because I haven't said it yet, we've got AI that's going to help us with all of this stuff, and we don't even have to think or look or do. Yes, and now I'm going to owe the swear jar, because anybody bringing up AI has to put some money in the swear jar. If you say AI, if you talk about it, good, bad, or ugly. So I owe the swear jar. Look, we got a few more minutes, and I want to see if anyone has any questions about what we've been discussing. Nothing's off limits, so if you have any question at all about CMMS, maintenance management, maintenance as a driver towards sustainability, step up to the mic and ask your question. Don't be shy. No questions?
I think they're gunshot.
You don't have
It
to
just
step
means
up
we
to the
did our
mic.
job.
Yeah. Did you find any of this useful, or did it have the context or relevance to what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, definitely useful, and I mean, a lot of the things you guys are saying, I completely agree, and there's issues in the industry, and I think what led me to start my own third-party maintenance is because the culture and the lack of craftsmanship, like you were saying, is you see these great technicians, and they try to fight the upper management for the support, and they get beaten down to the point where they're like, I'd rather be in the office and kick my feet up.
That's right.
And for me, I mean, now it's a great thing for me because I'm recruiting talent, great technicians, and I run my company from that standpoint, from where I see that gap is, where it's like we're quality first craftsmen and take care of the techs exactly how they need to be taken care of. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot in the industry that a lot of these companies, bigger companies, are not even having maintenance crews anymore, and they're just hiring outsource, which, like I said, for me is great, but it's also sad because there's a lot of technicians out there that they're great, except they just get beaten down to where they can't.
Well, they're in the wrong places, and they don't know how to find the right places. And at least with what you're doing,
right.
That's where you understand.
Right.
Sometimes we're not going to be seen, but I know how for us to get seen, and I know how to deliver these outcomes. And you're focused on what actually matters. You're a builder. You're not a destroyer.
Right.
And that's a shout out to Joe Anderson, by the way, over at Reliability X, because we want to focus in on this concept of building and building people and building better programs and delivering on results. And we want to make maintenance boring, because boring maintenance is successful maintenance.
Right.
I'll add to this. So you talk about creating your own company and then bringing on more of your own team, right? As pendulum is swinging,
Yeah.
it's going to return, right? These big organizations are outsourcing this liability because they found they didn't have the right, they weren't up to the challenge of ensuring they could actually lead the people, develop the people, maintain a high quality and a high standard, right? And now they're outsourcing it, and then you're going to get to a point, I hope you get to the point, where it's hard to find good quality technicians and offer competitive pay, because guess what, those big companies eventually in 5-10 years, they're now going to have the appetite to do this, and there's some new bigwig's going to come in and be like, I don't understand why we pay all this money for outsourcing, let's just bring it back in-source, it'll be so easy, right? This pendulum's going to keep swinging back and forth, it always has been. And that's kind of the issue, is that ownership. I think if we just do things the right way, like you said, with quality, I think we communicate it well enough, and we tie it in that like our habits drive an outcome, whether it's an energy conservation or it's resource conservation, which is also tied to the primary driver of maintenance, right? We'll all win.
Well, and the most unfortunate thing about doing these panel discussions is that we get into some really good stuff that we want to talk about for a long time, but we're down to about 1.5 minutes to go. And
I got a question for the group.
let's get that question in before we wrap.
For the audience, who has a better beard?
I'm all in for gingers.
Oh, all right.
Does it count if they've gone gray?
No.
My grandpa, yeah, he did, so yeah.
All right. So I am the loser on this one,
Yeah.
on that question.
You are not a loser, dude. I want to first of all thank you for attending and offering some questions, being engaged. I hope this was helpful in some way. We're all available for questions, whether it be now after this panel or throughout the conference, or later on, find us on LinkedIn. Jim Mayer is the manufacturing connector. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can also look up his website. He's available. He'll make some time for you just to chop it up some 10, 15 minutes. Same thing with Cory Dickens, and the reason I wanted you to know that he's a CMRP is he actually understands this stuff. He helps people with this all the time. This isn't about selling anything. This is about us being able to connect, and at any point if you ever need help, hey, what was that thing you were talking about with maintenance and sustainability? Anything like that. Hit all three of us up. We want all of us doing better, making better things. We want more onshoring. We want skilled trades to thrive more than anything, and we appreciate you being both here at the conference for Sustainable Manufacturing Conference, as well as MD&M West, which I'm sure you guys will be back tomorrow to check that out. But thank you for being here for this special episode of CMMS Radio.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.